So for today's agenda, we're going to be talking about what Chicago Hopes for Kids is as an organization. We'll go into how homelessness is defined under the McKinney Vento Act, and then we'll go into the rights with this act. Then we'll talk about the CPS SDLS program, and lastly, what to do if a student's rights are violated. So it's important to talk about what homelessness means under the McKinney Vento Act and who's included in all these rights. So the act defines students experiencing homelessness as those who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. So by fixed, we mean something that's on the ground, regular, something somewhere that the students can come back to repeatedly and predictably, and then adequate, you have all your utilities, you have your water, your heat, and all of that. And one example of this would be families living doubled up, and we see this a lot. So people who are sharing housing with others due to a hardship. So the first right under this act is the right of school choice, and this is seen in 3 different ways. We have school of origin, which is the school that the student attended when they were permanently housed, the school that the student was last enrolled in, and then the school nearest to their current residence. For example, if a student was permanently housed and attending a school in Inglewood and then moved to a shelter in Uptown, the student would still be able to go to that school in Inglewood, which is their school of origin, or they can go to a new school in Uptown. And similarly, if they were to then move again to a shelter in Lakeview, the student would have the option to attend their school of origin still, the school in Uptown, if that's where they were last enrolled in, or a new school in Lakeview. So the next right is the right to immediate enrollment, which means the student would be attending classes and participating fully in school activities. So a school cannot deny a student the right to immediate enrollment. That means if, say, a family went in to get their student enrolled and they were in a temporary living situation, the school cannot deny them the right to immediate enrollment, even if they do not have the necessary documents on hand. So that means the student should be in the classroom the day they go to get enrolled into school. And another important thing to note is that undocumented students experiencing homelessness are also covered by this act, and that it's illegal for schools to inquire about immigration status. So we talked earlier about the school of origin and how students can continue going there, but this can cause barriers such as transportation. So CPS will provide transportation to and from the school of origin, including all school-related activities. And transportation must be provided if it's a barrier to attendance, enrollment, and success in school. This also includes preschool students with disabilities. This type of transportation can look differently for everyone depending on their situation. So for students 7th through 12th grade, they can receive venture cards for transportation, but if they're 6th grade and younger, both the student and the primary caregiver will be received venture cards. And if the parent, for whatever reason, cannot accompany the student, if they're 6th grade and below on CTA, then a yellow school bus can be an option for them as well.
One important thing to note with the yellow school bus is that a lot of times the district will require some kind of proof of the barrier presented when it comes to the parent being able to assist the child to school on CTA. So if you are in a position where you might be helping someone fill out the form for a yellow school bus, just know that it's a good idea to come prepared with some kind of proof as to why that service is a need.
And then the next right would be waive fees. So all school-related fees are supposed to be waived for students in SDLS regardless of their family's income. So this includes the free and reduced lunch program. And then if you look on the slide, here's a list of the different fees that would be waived, such as uniforms, field trips, school supplies.
In addition to being able to waive fees, each school is given a budget for the year that they can use to support students in the STLS program for other expenses that might arise. So for example, if a student needs glasses, the schools do have funding set aside to be able to meet those needs. Another example would be like winter is coming, students need a coat, the school should be able to supply some kind of gift card or other support. The same thing goes for sports. So if a student wants to play, let's say basketball at the school not only has to cover the fee of playing the sport, but also can support with providing the equipment necessary. It has to be a sport that is affiliated with the school. And then, what was I going to say? With relation to the funding that the school receives that they can use for this program, at a certain point of the year, the school is able to kind of roll that over into their larger budget. And so it's really important to try to access that, earlier in the year rather than later.
So ultimately, the goal is to remove all barriers for SDLS students. Barriers must be removed that prevent students from receiving appropriate credit for coursework completed if they attended a prior school. One way this can be seen is in free after-school tutoring. Another program is Chicago Connected, which during the pandemic especially was helpful for families. They're able to receive free internet or hotspots, and they can reach out to their SDLS liaison to learn more about that or with the school directly. So here's a recap of the rights we went over that are covered under the McKinney Vento Act. Now we'll go more into the SDLS program itself. So it stands for Students in Temporary Living Situations, and it's the CPS program that serves children pre-K through 12th grade that are experiencing homelessness. So to be in the SDLS program, you have to enroll, and enrollment is required annually, and the paperwork must be completed by school staff. So families are encouraged to enroll in this program so they can receive all the benefits from it, especially if they live in a shelter. So this brings us to how can you help? By being familiar with all these rights, with whether you work in a shelter or you may know a family experiencing homelessness, you can let them know what their rights are, and especially encourage families to disclose that they're in a temporary living situation so that they can receive all these benefits from the program, such as the ones we talked about, like Wi-Fi or hotspots. Connecting with an SDLS liaison can really help them through the process. So let them know that there is somebody at every CPS school that can help them through this. And lastly, like Alex mentioned earlier, there are school funds specifically set aside for the SDLS program. And if they don't take advantage of these funds, they're not rolled into the SDLS program for the next school year. Here's just a sheet of all the contact information for the SDLS team. Up at the top, if you ever have any questions, they have the helpline and then an email, which is sdlsinformation@cps.edu.
And this presentation is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. You all will get the link in an email after the presentation if you would like to access this slide specifically.
And then in terms of health and safety precautions, since students are going back to CPS full-time this school year, their website currently has the same health and safety precautions that they had at the end of the last school year. It's subject to change, but it seems like that's what it's going to be like again. So this includes face coverings, daily health screens and temperature checks, air quality assessments, and then cleaning protocols. And from here, I'm going to pass it to Alex, and she'll talk about what to do if your rights are violated.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there are times where families do have issues at the school. Could be for a number of reasons, could be enrollment issues, school saying we need a birth certificate before we can allow your child to attend school, something like that. And so recently we've partnered with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless Law Project. They actually have a lawyer on staff who can support in helping families file disputes. And so her information is on this slide. And like I said, this will be sent out to folks later for future reference. But okay, what to do if there's a dispute. So if there is a dispute, if a family feels like their rights are being violated, Chicago Public Schools does have a very formal dispute process and protocol. Oh, sorry. Oh, there we go. So the family can essentially tell the person at the school that they're working with, which is typically going to be the SDLS liaison, that they would like to file a dispute. Once that happens, the school should give them some kind of paperwork to fill out. And then it can be kind of a lengthy process between filling out the paperwork, having it submitted, and just waiting for that to process. So what we recommend is reaching out to the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless for support, reaching out directly to the SDLS department reaching out directly to the department that is located downtown. So that's the email that's on the slide. Each school does have their own SDLS liaison, but there is someone at the central office of CPS that can be contacted for support. Right. So that is what we have. Super short presentation. We tried to keep it short, to the point. And this slide also has some really good, has a really good recap of all the things that we talked about. So if there's one thing that you take away from this presentation, it should be that CPS has a program. This law is a federal law, meaning that every school in the United States has some version of this type of support. And the main thing that this law attempts to do is to remove barriers. So if something is presenting as a barrier, that is cause for contacting the school, getting connected with the SDLS liaison, and it is the school's responsibility to do their due diligence in trying to remove that barrier. Does anyone have any questions? Awesome. Okay, well, you all know where to find us. We're happy to help with any questions that may come up, connecting folks to their local liaison. If you are working with a family who is interested in getting in touch with their liaison, typically what I recommend is just reaching out to the school directly, either via phone call or via email, and letting them know, hey, I'm working with a family who wants to get in touch with their SDLS liaison. Can you help us get connected? There is no list out there. Some schools do have it on the website, but since this position is not a full-time position, it tends to be kind of like a secondary position in which the guidance counselor might be the liaison, or the person at the front office might be the liaison. That person can change somewhat frequently. And so in my opinion, the best thing to do is just reach out to the school directly and ask them who that person is for the year. And like we said, there is a central office within CPS, and their information would be this SDLS information at cps.edu, or this phone number listed right below. One question that we get often is, what about charter schools? So charter schools that are affiliated with CPS should have they should have the same program. They should have the SDLS program. They should have a liaison because they are affiliated with the district. Charter schools that are independently run are a little bit different. So by law, every school is supposed to have a liaison, but when it comes to enrollment in the school, that is often left to principal discretion. So it's really important to note that the law states that the student has the right to the local neighborhood school, which in a city like Chicago can be really complicated, right? Because we have our selective enrollment schools, we have charter schools, we have neighborhood schools. And so if a family is moving, let's say, to the Inglewood neighborhood, and they really want to enroll their student in a selective enrollment school, there are some other things that the family might have to do to get their child into that school, because it is testing based, right? So the school that they have the right to is the neighborhood school. So that's one thing that's really important to know, although it never hurts to ask. Oftentimes it's up to principal discretion. And so the liaison is the person that can support with enrollment in the school or petitioning for enrollment in the school. Thank you once again for coming, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank y'all.